Welcome back, friends, to Regenera Rising. It is Spaceship Earth Day, and we have had a packed schedule of juicy offerings, and we are not going to stop now. Up next, we have John Crawford, and he's going to share with us about his Cryosphere Crisis project. John Crawford is an intermedia artist, performance director, and systems designer. Engaging directly with the emerging technologies of our time, his work creates rich, immersive environments and compelling interactive experiences through embodied interaction. His artistic projects are performed in theaters, exhibited in galleries, and presented as interactive installations featuring creative exploration of environmentalism, climate justice, and community engagement. His work investigates how the human desire to transform our environment is unleashing destructive forces that endanger the world and everything in it, including ourselves. He is a professor of intermedia arts at University of California, Irvine, where he founded and directs the Embodied Media Research Project, featuring a range of projects, courses, and collaboratories that integrate socially engaging art making and connected design thinking with emergent media production. He is the co-founder of Eco Art Lab and Eco Design Lab, two nonprofit organizations employing art and design to respond to the escalating crisis driven by, pardon me, this just changed. Pardon me. Driven by the rapidly evolving human capacity to alter planetary ecosystems. Pardon me, we were right there on the end of it. I apologize, John. Welcome.
No problem.
How are you,
Thanks. It's
how are you
great to be
doing
here.
today?
I'm really wonderful, and I think our camera's on. There we go. So I'm here with two wonderful collaborators. This is everybody, the first studio session for our new project, Cryosphere Crisis, and we're so happy to be able to be here with you on Earth Day 2022. And we'll be telling you more about the project and where we're going with it. But first of all, I'd like to continue with the introductions. You've heard a bit about who I am, and I'll turn it over to Shadow. Please tell them a bit about yourself, Shadow.
All right. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. Thanks to John for the collaborative invite. Happy Earth Day to everybody. My name is Shadow Devereaux. I'm a Salish and Blackfeet hip hop artist. I reside in Missoula, Montana. I've been working on music and audio engineering for just over 10 years now. I do that now as a full-time job, and I'm also a producer and co-producer, co-director, and youth advocate and community activist. So wide range there. But I'm also a co-owner with my buddy here, Coulter, of the studio that we're sitting in now, which is New Wave Studio. And with that, I'll pass it off to Coulter.
Everyone, happy Earth Day. I'm Coulter Olmsted. I'm a filmmaker based here in Missoula as well, and very excited to be part of this project with John and Shadow, and look forward to it.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. And you know, New Wave Studio is a very interesting place because my understanding is that part of what you do is produce your own work, but maybe even a bigger part is that this is an access location. It's a way that local artists in the community can get their work online and out to a wider audience.
Absolutely. Yep.
Great. Well, I'll also introduce one other member of our team who was here earlier, but unfortunately wasn't able to stay the whole time. MJ studies environmental ethics, which combines philosophy and environmental sciences. He is both from the Blackfeet and Grovent tribes of Montana. He grew up on the Blackfeet Reservation, deeply embedded in his culture and language. After high school, MJ joined the United States Marine Corps, which is commonplace being from a warrior culture. After an honorable discharge, MJ realized that there is more peaceful and substantial work to be done in regards to environmental philosophy and activism. MJ looks to continue writing and incorporating an indigenous perspective into the discussion. So that's the four of us. There's others involved in the project. I want to give a big shout out to Ivan Williams, co-producer of the project, who is on a plane back on this way from Washington, D.C. now. We seem to be a very mobile group. We're all moving from one place to another. Speaking of which, I want to tell you a little bit about where we're located. So you heard that we're in Missoula, Montana, and I bet some of you said, what? Where's that? And Missoula is in a really amazing, beautiful, and super important part of the world. It's actually in the valley of a huge glacier sculpted lake, and the mountains all around this huge valley we're in are all glacier sculpted. And at the north end of the valley is a national park called Glacier National Park. And this area was really not only sculpted, but transformed by the energies of glaciers during the times of the ice ages. We're here now in a place where today we can look up in the mountains and there's snow up on top of them. I was up in the mountains yesterday and got snow on my boots. But it's a time of transformation. Here we are in spring where the bison calves are being born. Saw a few of them yesterday. And the water is starting to move. The ice is turning, changing, turning into a new form. And all of this is a big part of the reason why we felt that this was a really important place to do the first phase of our new film project from EcoArtLab called Cryosphere Crisis. So one of the things that you've heard about already, those of you who are in Design Science Studio, and maybe others have heard about this in other ways, is that there are forms of knowledge, forms of wisdom that are not part of the kind of traditional Western view of science, ecology, even art making. We think it's important to value another form of traditional knowledge, something that sometimes is called traditional ecological knowledge, or indigenous and traditional ecological knowledge, TEK or ITEK. And I know you've studied that to some extent in Design Science Studio. We want to take that as an input or as an impetus for our artistic process, where we're looking at what it means to be a human in the 21st century in a world where the ice is melting in unprecedented ways, at least unprecedented during the time of human occupation of this planet. The ice is melting because the climate is changing. The climate is changing because of human impacts, because of human-caused climate change, or sometimes the scientists call it anthropogenic climate change. So the scientists refer to all of the surfaces of the Earth that are covered in ice, the polar ice caps, the glaciers I mentioned earlier, the permafrost, frozen Arctic tundra, call all this the cryosphere. And we're addressing in this film the idea that the cryosphere is a hugely significant part of the environmental crisis we're facing. The film project is called Cryosphere Crisis. And we wanted today to bring you into the time of creation of this piece. I arrived in Missoula, just did a little work yesterday and met up with Shadow and Coulter today. We've been doing most of this project so far remotely on Zoom, and we were just talking about how great it is that we can be here in person and finally kind of getting some things happening that we feel will be initial ideas for this piece. We're developing this piece, and this will be no surprise to those of you who know me from previous sessions I've done in Design Science Studio. We're developing this in an iterative way. As with design thinking, obviously iteration is a big part of design thinking. Ideation is a big part of design thinking. But to that, we are bringing in our feelings of improvisation, our feelings of intuition, and making art that is responding to some of these new directions that are possible in contemporary technology is making possible. So the studio session here is bringing all of you together with our space, our creative space. And I'm hoping that Shadow and Coulter, you can tell us a bit more about your approach to art making and some of the kinds of work that you do. And we're in the very early stages of the project. This is our first studio session, but we felt it was a really important time to share some of these ideas with you. So the format for today is that we'll have a bit more a discussion of some of the things we're working on. And then we wanted to show you an example of some of the work that is being developed. And I'll tell you more about it after you hear it and see it. But I thought it would be really interesting for you all to experience this, this initial experiment that we've done based around a song that Shadow wrote with some text from MJ as added on material to it, all filmed and edited by Coulter with a little bit of footage from this area that I captured yesterday. So we're in the very early parts, stages of the film, as I mentioned, but I think it's a really useful opportunity for everyone to get into this time of creation. So speaking of that, and not wanting to put you guys too much on the spot, Shadow and Coulter, although I don't mind putting you on the spot a little bit, what else can you share with us about the kind of work you do and maybe your own connection to some of these concepts and concerns?
Yeah, I'll start. So mainly the kind of work that I've kind of focused on over the last couple of years is highly focused on my culture and my community. And so I've kind of went away for this decade or so and gained my own knowledge and my own creation and kind of brought it back to my community. And so now I'm focusing on, giving what I have back. And I mean, it's not much, but it's a little bit. And so that is my main focus as of right now. And also another thing with New Wave that Coulter and I try to focus on is really trying to get the youth to have a resource that they don't usually have. We like to get people in here sometimes for free. We provide services. We like to get them on the right path for doing something like this for a career, because it's, I feel like art and media is just very low on the scale for things that are taught to the young mind. So that's kind of my focus here. And you want to go, Coulter?
Yeah. Building off of that, I think Shadow and I really connected together when we first started meeting up and working on projects, because we're both from Montana, and even the big cities in Montana are considered small in a lot of other parts of the country. So just giving access to rural parts of our state and giving kids opportunities to express themselves through arts is a huge thing for us. And so being able to work in that field and give back is super awesome, because we would have killed to have that type of stuff in our lives when we were growing up, and don't take it for granted now. So definitely projects going forward are humanitarian and youth-based to try to give back to our community as much as we can.
Love it. Is there a particular style or form of music that is kind of typical of the people that you work with in New Wave Studio, or is it a range? And if so, what are some examples?
I would say the main focus is hip hop, and especially for the communities that we work with that are indigenous communities, like the reservation, highly hyper focused on hip hop usually. And then the other one that I work with personally, and Coulter has too, is traditional music. So drumming and, dancing and things like that. That's really the main focus, but we don't say that we are hip hop focused. It just happens to be the most popular one that we do deal with.
In our backgrounds.
Yeah, we're both huge hip hop heads, so it makes sense. But our first project that was finished in this studio was a Americano singer-songwriter, just from down here in the Bitterroot Valley. So there's no real huge focus on things. I think we just kind of let it build its own. So
You can see it in, you can see part of it on the right-hand side of your screen, everybody, but there's a huge Mac Miller poster hanging there, or fabric tapestry, yeah. And I certainly can hear maybe a little bit of Mac as an influence in the work you guys do, which I think is amazing. Just an incredible artist taken from us way too soon. And I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about what it means to make new forms that are in some ways based on or connected with traditional forms. Because I bet there are some people who see the traditional form as something that is not changeable.
Right.
It has to be done in its traditional way.
Right.
And if it's not, maybe that's kind of a problem. But I get the feeling that you guys don't quite see it that way.
Yeah, no, not at all. I've, up until now, I've kind of thought that too with the elders in my community. I thought there's no way they're gonna look at a hip hop song and be like, oh, that's the transformation. But honestly, it's happened now a few times. The CSKT Tribal Council was impressed with some of the work that we've done together, and that was one of my things I put on my resume is I'm good at bridging that gap between culture, traditional culture, and putting it in a new form. And I've gotten props on it, and I think it's a really good thing to highlight, because it's it speaks more to the younger generation, which are the ones who are going to be the ones to be in power. So I think the elders appreciate that. So yeah.
Cool. Thoughts on that, Colton?
Yeah, I mean, even just working with you, Shadow, I think ideologically, just the times that we've done the stuff with the reservation, it's interesting to see how the youth and the generation below us, and then a lot of the adults and generation above us have kind of like come together through the way that Shadow's expressing his art and stuff, which I think is really cool. And if we can continue to use that, and not only for the youth, but also give a voice to tell the older generation, like, hey, we're passionate about certain things as well. So
Right. Yep.
You mentioned that a CSK Tribal Council.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
So that is the council of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribe. So they're the ones who they control all of the economy within the tribe. So tribally owned businesses, the tribe itself has a bunch of services they provide to all of the members, and even first descendants, and even non-members too, actually. But they're the ones, anything we do, usually they're the ones who make the choices. So it's really, that's the top tier. So if you get approved by them, it's usually like, wow, I did it.
Yeah,
So,
this super important and super influential element of the local culture here. And it's not well known, but there's large areas of land that are actually fully controlled by the tribal council. And for example, there's a huge wilderness area right near here, the Mission Mountains Tribal Wilderness, that is, I believe, the first tribal wilderness in the US, where it's essentially like a national park or national forest, except it's not under the control of the US government. The US government has ceded control to the Confederated Nation, made up of Salish Kootenai, and then also I think there's other tribes that are involved in peripheral ways. So it's been a really amazing learning experience for me. The few months that I've been here working with this group, really excited about the way we can base our art making in this local culture, which really is global in its reach and importance. So in a minute, we're going to play you our experiment because we really want to share some of the art with you. But before we do that, Shadow, Coulter, any last things you want to add or mention?
I don't have anything personally, I don't think.
Great. Well, we'll have some time for Q&A after we play this. So let me see if I can share this. And okay, I think we got that happening. Yeah, I'm going to need to quit and come right back. I was just told that I need to leave the meeting. So my apologies. Hopefully my friends in Design Science Studio can cover me for 30 seconds while I leave the meeting and come right back.
Yes, no worries. We do this all the time here on the Vision Train. And it's often that when in the moment when you're in the hot seat, that good old Murphy comes around, and Murphy will show his or her face that day, and we have to just be patient and roll with it, right? But that's the fun aspect of live performance and live sharing. See, they're already back. And here we go. How's everybody feeling out there? You're already back, see?
What did I miss?
Just me blabbing.
Okay, well, thanks for dealing with the technical issues.
No problem.
So it
Do this all the
looks
time.
much better. I think we will be good.
Oh, now you need it.
Need a password.
Yeah.
It doesn't say there's audio in case you wanted to share audio. Oh, there we go. I see the audio.
Uh-oh, we're gonna have to do it again.
So let me just start playing it and see if you can hear it.
Yep, there's audio.
Good. Okay, so I'll be back on the other side to discuss Q&A, whatever works for everybody. We'll be here.
Science and medicine have improved our species' lives in almost every way imaginable. Most of us don't have to forage for food or build our own homes. A lot of us can get fresh water with the simple press of a button. We no longer have to be constantly on guard that the neighboring city-state will attack us, or that surviving a plague is a constant struggle. Most of us no longer rely on religious fanaticism and superstition to desperately try to improve our lives. But something happened along the way. By lifting our species out of poverty and converting to lives of luxury, we've greatly changed many of the natural processes of the planet. Our numbers have exploded, and our presence can be experienced on every square inch of the planet. Everything from microplastics everywhere to pollution and waste. This has brought along with it many unintended consequences like extinction of many species, the exacerbation of natural disasters, and loss of habitat. People often argue that the climate has always been changing, but deny the same science and the same scientists who warn that the climate is changing more rapidly than ever before. That one species of primates has tipped the balance so much, ushering in an era of anthropogenic climate change. But science is nonpartisan. The planet heating more and more every year isn't a matter of opinion. The rising of the oceans and acidification isn't a grandiose conspiracy, and the amount of non-human animal extinction isn't a miscalculation. But reading the data and hearing the news every day can be difficult. We often see the changes every day. massive wildfires, hurricanes, die-offs, and drought. Yet there are no clear paths forward. Do we take a bottom-up approach and get over 7 billion individuals to make change? Or do we strive for legislative change for entire countries, industry, and agriculture? Well, we need all of them. Because the issue of anthropogenic climate change is so widespread and pervasive, so too are some of the solutions. Everything from a more ethical diet, renewable energy, protecting biodiversity, education, no-till agriculture, and hopefully international treaties. It includes almost every academic discipline and every individual. But what then? Homo sapiens sapiens seem to be very adaptable. But what about everything else? All the plants, fungi, and non-human animals. Do they have inherent worth and a right to live? Do they not suffer from our actions? What about mountains and rivers? Are they good enough not to be polluted or destroyed by humans? Using technology to prevent a mass extinction solves just one problem, and a big one at that. But I would argue that at the core is a fundamental disregard for nature. What would happen if we were to colonize another planet only to run the same problem over again? For a long time, most humans radically changed their relationship to nature. Soil only became valuable on how much crops it could yield. Non-human animals were bred solely to provide labor, food, and clothing for humans. Water became nothing more than a resource and property. Humanity began to desperately try to separate themselves from nature. This is where modernity can learn from indigenous peoples who didn't lose their relationship to nature. During the era of colonialism, many indigenous groups didn't make it out alive. The ones who did came at a cost. Their views and ways of life were suppressed, abandoned, or forgotten. But there were some who didn't lose hope. They passed down with them the knowledge that humanity and nature are one and the same. Not just living systems, but even rocks, fire, and air. The water that makes up our bodies and the air that we breathe are just as sacred as the oceans and atmosphere. A professor once asked their class, "There are many tribes who live in the area. What do you think their word was for wilderness in their language?" It was a trick question. There was no word. There was no separation. Modern-day indigenous people are leading the way all over the world, exercising sovereignty to protect water, mountains, non-human animals, and everyone else through traditional ecological knowledge. Our numbers are small, but our influence is growing. We can disagree about specifics, and we can debate legislation. But I would argue that people can learn from indigenous people on how to become one with nature again. Hanya.
Foreshadow. Yeah, change is the double-edged sword. Change is bad when it's forced. I can't change the world alone. Together we can change the course. Switch up the way we've been thinking, man. Not so selfish at the source. Mother Earth is the one that's hurting. We need to let nature run its course. I said change is the double-edged sword.
This guy's live rapping if you want to see.
I can't change the world
You want to
alone.
hear?
Together we can change the course. Switch up the way we've been thinking. Not so selfish at the source. Mother Earth is the one that's hurting. We need to let nature run its course. Stop polluting our minds with trash. Stop polluting our air with gas. We're ruining every single place we touch. Burning bridges, pillaging path. Our footprint too big to be leaving it here. Need to repair all the damage we done. We gotta think about the cryosphere, man. The science here, second to none. My people have been the result of change. Not all that change been good to us. I know change is good, but really it's not when it's only plots to be ruining stuff. Our planet suffers if we getting greedy. Nobody thinks about that kind of stuff. The selfishness turns selflessness. That's where the people need making up. We can change the world as long as we together. We can't change the earth. We can't change the weather. I can't change the work, but I can change for better. Doing things that benefit life, we have to change forever. Yeah, change is the double-edged sword. Change is bad when it's forced. I can't change the world alone. Together we can change the course. Switch up the way we've been thinking, man. Not so selfish at the source. Mother Earth is the one that's hurting. We need to let nature run its course. I said change is the double-edged sword.
Change is bad when it's forced. I can't change the world alone. Together we can change the course. Switch up the way we've been thinking, not so selfish at the source. Mother Earth is the one that's hurting. We need to let nature run its course. I said change is a double-edged sword. Change is bad when it's forced. I can't change the world alone. Together we can change the course. Switch up the way we've been thinking, not so selfish at the source. Mother Earth is the one that's hurting. We need to let nature run its course.
Okay, the artistry of Foreshadow, Shadow Devereaux with Coulter Olmsted, and you also heard from MJ DeRosier. So, yeah, no word for wilderness. No word for wilderness because there was no separation. I'm here with you today to bring you into the time of creation of this piece. We are very grateful to be included in the vision train, but because of scheduling, we had planned an earlier session, and my colleagues, including MJ and Shadow and Coulter, all have other gigs they have to be at. So they've left me to hold the fort and do my best to answer your questions, connect with you a bit more, give you a bit more kind of detail about some of the things that we're working on, and also maybe to share a little bit of where we go from here. So I'm quite happy to address any questions or comments now, so feel free to put them in the chat. But in the meantime, I wanted to share with you a little bit about where this piece is coming from and how what you heard relates to the final film. So you heard, you know, a narration of several minutes. That was MJ, he wrote that. And then you heard Shadow's song, at least the first version of it. He wrote that in the last few days and recorded it here at New Wave Studio. These are not yet a film. These are not yet the kind of artwork that we're going for, because what we're going for is something interlayered where these threads interweave back and forth. But we have to start somewhere. We have to start with the kind of raw material. So if you want to maybe use the analogy of a painter, right? We've got our palette and we're starting to kind of grind the paints, the making, you know, assembling the chemicals and the components that go into making the colors. We're definitely not yet making the painting, but I bet from what you heard, you can start to feel a little bit of that coming for yourself. You're feeling the passion and the concern and the personal level of investment in how people that have lived here for generations, that have been part of this landscape for thousands of years, are maybe even more than most of us. Me, for example, being somebody who came here from somewhere else quite recently, super engaged in not only being concerned about the crisis, but finding ways of mitigating, dealing with it in various ways. Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Alicia, for posting Shadow's wonderful lyrics in the chat. Changed is a double-edged sword. Change is bad when it's forced. I can't change the world alone. Together we can change the course. And where do we go from here? Well, several things are happening. We'll be working more with the lyrics and the development of Shadow's wonderful song, which, by the way, is great as is, but we're looking for ways that we can deepen some of the emotional content, and also look for a way that we can build a stronger through line that can be a solid element for the film. I was so grateful, I am so grateful to MJ for his passionate treatise that you heard at the beginning of that segment. MJ is not only an environmentalist and a community engaged organizer, but I really see him as a philosopher, somebody who is looking at the philosophy, what things mean, because of course that's a big part of what philosophers do, is they think about, they embody, they connect with the meaning, the real deep meanings of things. And so we'll be working more with the text that MJ is writing to find ways to bring deeper levels of meaning into the film as it develops. One thing that I'm not able to show you today, but hopefully next time we'll have more in that regard, is that you saw and heard from 4 men in today's session, and we all are extremely focused on creating diversity and diverse range of expression in all kinds of ways in this project. So we will be bringing in others who identify as female as part of the project and as part of the creative team. We'll also be looking for a range of generational input. You heard Shadow and Coulter talk a bit about what it's like to be a young artist and working in a culture where the primary hierarchical nature of the control structures can sometimes be a little bit more driven by people who have more years on the planet. But not all forms of engagement need to go through these hierarchical structures, and that's something we're finding right away. We've been able to make connections with many different people up and down the Flathead Valley. Whitefish is a ski town, resort town at the north end of the valley, the north end of the lake, and here we are in Missoula, kind of down in the southern end of the valley. From one end of the valley to the other, we have potential collaborators and people we can work with. Mentioning Whitefish for a minute, there's a film and technology festival coming up in Whitefish in March of 2023. And we've been fortunate enough that the organizers of that festival have graciously offered to work with us on further development of this piece. And as a matter of fact, I met Shadow and his colleagues originally through some of the wonderful people organizing this Winterland Festival. So keep your eyes peeled for that. It would actually be a great destination. This whole area is beautiful. Whitefish is an amazing place to go to, and it'll be the first festival of its kind anywhere in the country. And we hope that Eco Art Lab and this project specifically are a central part of it. So Elise had a comment slash question. From the bit we have jumped into, this seems like an example of sensory ethnography. Is that a process you are incorporating? Definitely, yes. Sensory ethnography, it's a wonderful phrase. Ethnography, of course, is in some ways, the study of cultures, the study of what happens when cultures connect. And I would maybe add one word to that phrase, because sensory ethnography in itself is, of course, is definitely enough. But I feel that for the artwork we're doing, we want this to be an embodied experience. So maybe thinking of this as embodied sensory ethnography. The sensations we pick up as individuals, as people who are experiencing the world, people who are experiencing art in different ways, can sometimes end up being a little bit disconnected from human physical experience. And I know that many of you in Design Science Studio feel the same way. That's why you're here, and that's a big part of this embodied experience, is a big part of what you've been working on and developing. But I also think that there's ways that we can connect our bodies to these places, even if we're not physically here. So there are ways, I think, that we can use art to communicate sensory experience across time and space. And that's a big part of what we're working on. I will mention that one of our aspirations, this all depends on whether the support structures can be put in place in time, is that in addition to presenting our film at the Winterland Festival coming up in March 2023, we would love to do a live performance where the film itself kind of becomes part of an overall experience where the film is projection that is part of the space, creating a visceral environment for the performers to inhabit. In the meantime, though, here's our trajectory. We're beginning with a prototype film. And this prototype is intended to be, well, in the ways that prototypes are, a model of our intention. And it's a model for us to learn from. And it's also a model for us to use as a connectivity device with people that are interested in being part of our overall project, financial supporters, people who will work with us as artists, as creators. And that prototype film, which we expect to have finished and released by the end of this summer, then will be the seed for a short, a film festival type short, which will be finished by the end of this calendar year. That's going to be submitted certainly to mountain film festivals like Banff and Telluride and other places. But we feel that there's also a broader range of festival and exhibition opportunities for this short film, which will probably be in the range of 8 to 10 minutes, not more than 12. And then that, of course, is really an iteration that will be the base for this next phase that I mentioned, which will be the live performance, which will include filmic elements. So that's probably all the time we have for today. I personally have another commitment I have to run off to, but I was really glad that we were able to make the schedule work, and I really appreciate all of you at Design Science Studio for making this possible for us. And it was a really wonderful opportunity and experience to be on the Vision Train with you. So thanks, everybody, and look forward to a whole week of regenerarizing.
Thank you, John. And thank you to MJ and Shadow and Coltrane. Please pass on our gratitude.
We certainly will.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was really moved by that and those lyrics. Change is a double-edged sword. Change is bad when it's forced. I can't change the world alone. Together we can change the course. Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. See you on the other side.